Hi there, and welcome to the Geniusee webinar. Thank you for joining us today as we're going to explore an intriguing question. Should AI solutions always be developed in Python? To start with, it's worth noting Geniusee's 7+ years experience that includes over 180 successful projects. And we now have made AI a core focus of our work, from creating AI-driven applications for financial services to developing tools and platforms that empower educational institutions. We're constantly exploring how data intelligence can tackle real-world challenges and help scale businesses effectively. Now, I'm thrilled to introduce Oles Dobosevych, one of the top minds in AI and the head of data science and engineering here at Geniusee, where he's delivered 20 successful AI-powered projects across various domains. He's got a rich background as a CTO for YC and Techstars-backed startups. He's also collaborated with Meta, honing his expertise in leadership and cutting-edge technologies like computer vision, natural language processing, and audio processing. In today's session, Oles is going to discuss whether Python still holds its spot as the go-to language for AI development and where alternatives might be a better fit. He's going to shed light on the current state of AI and what's on the horizon. And another interesting topic is going to be to cover the dynamics of AI pricing and implementation costs. And of course, we're going to conclude with a Q&A session, so please feel free to drop your questions in the chat as we go along. Let's get started. Oles, the floor is yours.
Eric, thank you for your introduction. So let's start. So today, we would be talking whether AI is still dominated by Python or there are some other alternatives. So what is plan for today? The plan for today is pretty simple. So we will start from simple introduction. Then we would have a case description. I think case is one of the best way to talk about something. That's why I prepared a case for you. After that, we would talk about alternative and compare them. And if the Python is not a main language for AI development, where there the Python stills now? What is the nice place for Python to use nowadays? After that, I would sum up our talk, and we would have at the end Q&A. So let's start from introduction. So my name is Oles Dobosevych, as Eric introduced me. So I'm leading data science and data engineering department at Geniusee. I'm a former CTO of YC and Techstars-backed. I have a pretty solid research background and have recent publication with Meta. And I have pretty a lot of years in development and a lot of successful completed project in AI. So to start with, I think the main question is that's arise with any AI project is where to start it. So, and if you would ask an expert about that, the expert would answer you pretty differently. The expert would answer you pretty differently. Someone would say that's okay, data collection and exploration, that's something that you need to start for sure. Because if you don't have data, then you cannot do put AI in your project. The other would say that you need to start from quick wins. That means that you need to develop something very, very quickly, provide it to your users, receive feedback and iterate pretty fast. The other would say that the AI is pretty complicated topic, and you would need to collaborate with experts to develop your AI project. What I would today be focusing about, I would today be focusing that, a lot of these things are really important, but something that's actually becoming less and less important actually is technologies and tool selection. So this is becoming less and less important, and you don't need to worry as much nowadays about technologies and tool selection, as there is a lot of solutions already existing for you. So let's start from our case. The case looks pretty similar for you. So assume that you have a learning platform, and your learning platform is entirely developed with JavaScript. That means that actually the whole frontend is written in JavaScript, and the whole backend is written in JavaScript. And what you want to do, you actually want to design something that's called AI search nowadays, or smart search. So how usual search engines are working? So usual search engines are working in a way that they are splitting like uh, your sentence into pieces, either words or phrases, and then like they are doing like search like your whole database by these keywords. Sometimes it's more advanced, and not only the exact keywords are searched, but also like some semantically similar. It seems that you have like Apple, and it would understand like this like a smartphone, like something like that. That it would like all not only would search by the word itself, but also would find like the results that have like semantically similar meaning. That sounds like already like pretty smart, but nowadays that it would not something that you would expect like from AI search. Nowadays, something that you would expect from AI search will look like next. It would look like that you would put like in your input like I want to become an expert, and it would not like find you only the courses that includes in their titles like either AI or like expert or something like that. It would also include you actual path how you could become this AI expert. And that's not the only scenario that you could expect that your user will go through. There is much more. For example, your user can actually ask like, I want to learn PyTorch. PyTorch like is actually a technology. That's not like a field or domain. That means that actually this technology could be covered like not in the whole course, but like in one lecture. This means that your AI engine should not recommend the whole course like the person to look at, but the specific lecture in which like the person is familiarized like with PyTorch. Okay, let's take a look into other scenario. Assume that your user would like to know like which is better, Java or JavaScript. What would usual engine do? It would recommend you courses like for Java and for JavaScript. That would not definitely what your user like want to see. The something that your user would rather want to see is some type of webinar, like where the person like would be describing like whether there is like a place for one language and whether there is like a place for another language, and how actually learn one and how to actually learn another, and where better to start like your path, like either like from JavaScript or from Java. Another scenario that your user potentially can enter may look, I want to start my career path in marketing. That's also an interesting case because like the user specifically asks not only about like courses, but also about order in which the person need to learn them, and so on. So there is like could exist much more other like different scenarios that you expect your system would be working with. And the simple AI search like would not work with that, just for the reasons that simple searching by keywords would not like help you to result or provide your client the best quality. So what would you need like to actually to design such a system? So you would definitely need an AI model to understand natural language. So something that would understand like this user input, extract from it like actually purpose, like what client asks, like what your client is asking for, and actually about what he is asking for, like either about like marketing, either about AI, either about like some different like field. You would definitely need like a model that would describe videos. Sometimes like on top of videos could be like some logos, either some pictures, and you would need like an AI model that would actually be describing these videos and would enable you to do search not only by text itself or titles of videos, but also by a content of videos. You will definitely need an AI model to actually to transcribe video. So for sure, you would not only want to have a search by either by video title or video description, you would also want to have like a search by actually by video transcription. You will definitely need like a search engine. What does search engine need to do? That the answer is pretty simple, like to do search. And the fifth thing that you would need to have is actually some service that would be serving like models for you. And if you would ask me how to develop like these components I don't know, like 3-4 years ago, the answer like would be pretty straightforward. The answers would be that for all of that, like you would need like at least like for 3 first services, like you would need for definitely Python. For of course one, you need to use some search engine that could not be written on Python, but in any case, like you would be interacting with it, like I assume within the Python. And for first one, like you would also need to a Python. And the reason for that is pretty simple. You have like all these AI models that are written on Python, and you want to interact with them. What would suit here better rather than Python? Definitely only Python would suit here. But nowadays, like this situation is a little bit different. You would not need to use like anymore like Python for all this like four things. What you can use nowadays for all these 4 things, actually AWS, GCP, or Azure, like cloud services. So you don't need like nowadays like to develop model by yourself. You don't need to serve it. Like AWS, like Bedrock, or Azure AI, like doing everything like for you. That also means that you don't need any more like service to serve model. But what would you need? So a little bit different things that you need nowadays is and that you didn't need previously is actually service that would be doing like orchestration, or would actually be reading like the data and transforming it in a proper form. Like for example, like the user would input search, what this engine would do, it would transform like your search query into some keywords, and then by actually applying this AI model, and then like actually transforming that like to the search engine. This is like an important like thing that this service would be responsible on. And as you see, like nowadays, like all these first 3 steps are not more like dependent on Python. They are like services, and you can access them like via any language that you want. So the natural question arises, like whether still you need like Python to develop this service that would nowadays not like be serving models, but rather like do orchestration. And to answer this question, actually you need first to understand how those services are called like in industry. So those services are called in industry RAG. RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. What does it mean? Actually, it means pretty simple, that usually large language model, what they are doing, they are like just like learn on ton of data, and when you are inputting like them data, what they are doing, they are just responding you back and not like doing like any search. RAG itself is a little bit more complicated process, and it allows you to actually incorporate your knowledge base within like this generation of your data, and adding like by adding like some additional knowledge. So actually what it's doing is actually doing like this orchestration that we were talking about. It's like transforming user input, doing like some queries with an internal like database, and then returning like back you either like videos, either like some posts, either like some webinars, either some other like additional stuff. So to understand like which language is the best for RAG, let's take a look into the market and see like what frameworks exist on the market. If you will take a look, do like a simple Google search for RAG, the best framework for RAG, you will definitely found like this one called LangChain. It was like one of the first like on the market, and exists like on the market for a pretty long time, like 2-3 years, like since AI have risen a lot. So this RAG framework is actually pretty popular, as you may see. It's have like around like 100K stars, and by doing like a simple search, you may find that this framework is available only on Python. But if you dive a little bit deeper, what you can actually find that this like framework is not only supported by Python, but it also supported by a lot of other languages. For example, LangChain itself have are developing RAG framework not only like for Python but also for JavaScript. There exists also an open source version of LangChain that is developed by Java community, so you can easily integrate LangChain into your Java application. This means that language is not as important nowadays, that you can actually choose a language that suits you better, not stick with Python, but stick with any other language that you want, either JavaScript, either Python, either Java. So then the natural question arises, like, what is important then? So I think like three main factors that you need to consider by developing your RAG application is actually product maintenance, performance, and code reusability. I would go one by one and explain you a little bit in more details, like why each of these points are important. So let's start like from product maintenance. So if I would say you that it doesn't make sense to develop microservice in Python for AI, and because like all the entire like your infrastructure is developed in JavaScript, you would say, okay, but like why should I care about that? We are like using like microservice architecture, and that means actually that our like services are like more or less independent. And that's a lot of people are thinking when they are talking like when they are like using like this microservice architecture like for developing. But in real life, the situation is a little bit more complicated. Yes, during the development stage, it's not so important like how many microservices you're having or how many like people are developing that stuff, because like that's like a development, and usually you can pretty easily plan ahead like how much time involvement of each person is needed. But what going after development, and that's like a pretty important thing like that's not a lot of people are caring about, is actually product maintenance. And when you have like, I don't know, like 5 services in 3 different languages, the natural problem arises like who would support all of that. So it's pretty hard to find on the market the person that's good like in JavaScript, Java, and Python. Probably you would need like at least like 2 person, or like in very bad scenario like 3 person. One that would know like Java, the other like would not know like Python, and the third like one would know JavaScript. And here like the problem arises when you are like supporting your product. It's pretty hard like to plan involvement of those 3 person like ahead. This means that you would need to, it would be much more harder to actually to plan their work, and it would cost you much more, because like usually when you're involving person like for 3 or 4 hours, that's much more expensive rather than like involving a full-time person like for the whole month. Thereby, like that might make much more sense, like to actually to develop the entire system in one language, because like you can for product maintenance you can just involve have like one person, and that one person like would actually do all the maintenance and like manage all the stuff. The next thing that you need to consider is actually performance. So Python is not the most efficient language, and you may hear a lot of jokes about that. So much more efficient languages are C++ or Java, and they are like actually increasing their efficiency even like better nowadays. With AI, like performance is like very critical component. The reason for that is pretty simple. Assume that you are like chatting with a chatbot like on a web page. What time do you expect it to answer? Usually that could be like several seconds or even milliseconds. And that's like a standard on the market. When you're chatting with ChatGPT, you're not expecting like the answer from ChatGPT would take you, I don't know, like minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes. You're expecting it like to answer you really fast. The same is like with a product that you would be building. You don't expect that your system would work like really slow. This is why like actually Python is not like can be not a good idea here. And if, for example, your entire system is developed in Java for the reason of the efficiency, integrating like part of this, using like Python microservice to actually to do the stuff is not a good idea. For the reason that it would just slow down like the system. The third thing that you need to think about is actually code reusability. Yeah, in ideal world like this, the services should be separated one from another. But what we have actually very often, we have that two services are very usually accessing like the same type of data or very similar type of data. In case like when we would have like search itself, there would definitely be access like from a backend to that search table to actually retrieve the content of the courses and to AI service to actually do the actual search. That would result that you would need to have two connections like to that database, two different ORMs that would be doing calls to that to your database. And this is a huge problem for the reason that each time that you would either introduce new fields, either would do some changes, either add some migration, you would need to do that in two places rather than in one place. And sometimes the developers are like forgetting the stuff. That would result that you would can arise like some data inconsistency can arise, and this is like a huge problem. In case when you would have for all of your components, you would have the same language, either like JavaScript or Java. What would you have? Even that AI component can be put into the service like where you have like your actual backend. So you would not need to have like two separate services. That all the stuff can be in one place, and that would simplify interaction with your data much more easier. So you can use the same ORM, the same code, the same post-processing logic, the same pre-processing logic, and the other additional stuff. So please think about this code reusability when you're selecting your solution to go with. So let's summarize our finding. So first of all, about cost efficiency. So here, native language approach is definitely much more better for several reasons, but the main reason would be that actually you would reduce your cost for the reason that the AI orchestration and actual backend can be done like within one service. Next criteria is actually development speed. With Python, that could be much more efficient rather than with native language approach. And you may think, why then? Why it would be like more efficient rather than with native language approach? The reason for that is pretty simple. Python for a long time was a dominant language for AI. That's why a lot of libraries actually exist around in that ecosystem. And very often you need some tool, not maybe for doing AI, but for like post-processing or pre-processing the data. And in such a case scenario, like actually Python is the best language because it actually have like all these tools already developed. With languages like Java or JavaScript, they don't have like as rich infrastructure, an example for image processing. They are much more pure and like don't have like any that great support nowadays. That's why with Python, it would be much more easier to do the prototyping and actually developing your initial solution. Let's talk then like about next criteria, user experience. So with native language approach, that would be actually much more better user experience. And you would ask why. The reason is pretty simple, because you have like this single access of data, point of access. And why, you ask why it's important? Again, the reason is for that actually with single data access points, your data would be consistent through the different services, and the same backend and the same like AI service would have access to the single point of data, and it would work well. And the last thing is actually maintenance and scalability. And here, like we already explained, why native language approach is much more better and much more efficient. Okay, so we understood that Python maybe not as good language for AI development. So the question naturally arises like whether there is a still place for Python or like we don't need to use Python anymore and you can stick like with the language you want and just develop like in the language that you already selected for your project. Actually, the answers arises like from the Python website. And if you would go like to the Python website and take a look where they recommend to use Python, you would see next categories. Like some of them are pretty obvious, like web and internet development. Yeah, for sure, Python here is a good choice. It has like a pretty rich infrastructure for development backend. It has like a really nice admin panel within the Django itself, and it's like really cool system. Yeah, that's definitely a very nice framework for business application. It has like very nice ERP frameworks that allows you to build and customize, build your custom solution. But I would not want to stick with these two. I would rather want to talk a little bit about topics it's pretty related to AI. And this topic is actually scientific and numeric. And that may sound like pretty general, but I would explain on the next slide what does it mean. So what is scientific and numeric? Scientific and numeric is a rich ecosystem of libraries that actually allows you to do data manipulation. So you may heard about libraries that call pandas. What does this library allow you to do? It actually allows you to pretty easily read the data, do some data transformation, and send this data back. Assume that you have a lot of CSVs and you want to clean them and then put that back, like, I don't know, like to Excel or some other like more complicated format. So the Python is the best language for here because it has like all this ecosystem of libraries. One of them is actually Pandas, the other one is called like Polaris, and this is like pretty easy. It also have a rich libraries of algorithms that allows you to do this data pre-processing and post-processing. And this is really cool. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit about like one more application of Python for data processing. And that application is called like Databricks. And if you heard about that platform, you may know that it allows you to do like this data manipulation. They called it like unified like data governance, a uniform platform that allows you to do business intelligence, like data science, data warehousing. And the interesting thing about it is Databricks allows you to do that in a lot of different languages. You can do that in SQL, you can do that with Python, you can do that with Java, and you can do that with Scala. And if I would ask you, like, which language do you think is the best for Databricks, you would potentially, based on what we were talking a little bit later previously, you would answer me, oh, I think like that language that would be the most efficient or the most the fastest one. And I would say yes and no. And yes and no, like for a pretty simple reason. Databricks is entirely written in Scala. And Scala itself is not like the best language that you write the most efficient and the most like the fastest code. And even Databricks team, if you would ask them like what people are using, they would answer you that our customers are primarily using Python, SQL, R, and Scala, and in that specific order. So the reason for that, and you would ask, but why? Like, if Scala is the most efficient and the fastest one, why someone is using like Python? And the reason for that is pretty simple. Is actually because Python is very flexible and very easy. To learn Scala, you actually need to understand like what is functional programming. Either to learn Python or SQL, you just need to learn like a few simple commands. And Databricks is all about flexibility. That's why like most of the clients there are choosing like the easiest framework to do the data manipulation. And that would be Python or SQL. And here, like to sum up, we see that actually Python is pretty good for this data processing and data manipulation. So let's go to our summary. So to sum up, like as I told you, so Python is really good framework for data manipulation. You should consider native language approaches in case you are using like services. So if you have like actually a lot of services and part of your code already written either in Java or JavaScript, you should for sure take a look into use this native language approach when you are using like actually either the same language that you wrote your entire code, like for actually AI development. You could also use Python, but like more like for prototyping. And what I want to sum up, like that you need to more focus like nowadays, like more on idea rather than on development project. AI already simplifies this development a lot and would simplify in the future that much more. So you don't need to nowadays more worry like about like which language to choose, because even if you write your entire code database in Python, ChatGPT pretty easily allow you to transfer whatever language you want. So more focus on your idea rather than on a specific technology or language. Thank you for the stage, and now it's time for Q&A.
Wow, Oles, that was very interesting. Definitely, people do need to be giving a lot of thought to the goal and the actual project. Don't let the tool selection paint you into the corner, so to speak. Folks, I do have a list of questions here that I'm looking forward to asking Oles, but I do urge you to go ahead and use the chat. If you have some questions, drop them in there and we'll work them in. This is a live event, which we're really enjoying. What I would be curious to ask you, Oles, why not use OpenAI's models for every problem? Use that type of large language model. What are the limitations or the considerations that I'm not seeing there?
I think like one of the things actually OpenAI is like really great tool, and they are like developing pretty urgently. But one of the things that you need to remember like when you're using OpenAI is actually security. So data is actually a new oil. That means that you don't want to provide this oil to anyone else. So if you are like sitting on this like tons of oils, you don't want just easily share like your oil with OpenAI and lose the money that you can extract like from that oil. So OpenAI itself have a pretty tricky security thing. And not all the time like it's a good thing like to actually to share like your data outside like your network. This is why like sometimes like OpenAI is not like the best solution, and you may find like some better like alternatives for or for using like large language models. For example, like Databricks that we already mentioned previously have a really nice platform that's called like Mosaic AI, and this platform is really nice to actually do a custom models within their like private ecosystem, and it would allow not to share like your data outside your network, and you would be secured, and you would not be to worry that you actually share data of your customers with OpenAI. This is why I don't think this OpenAI is actually a good like a silver bullet for all the problems. Sometimes it's much more easier to use like some custom model or open source model to actually to solve your problem.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Keeping control and staying safe, especially when you've got a lot of regulations dealing with HIPAA, for example, here in the healthcare industry in the U.S. I'm curious as far as how should I approach the development of an AI project? Are there specific steps or practices to follow?
I think like as I said, like the crucial step here, like first of all, is like actually your idea. If you have an idea, then that's like the most important like things like to start with development of your AI project. So the code itself nowadays can be written like either like by a support team, either by actually by AI. Initial prototype could be nowadays even developed by AI. So the idea is like pretty critical. And what I would add here, pretty often, additionally to your idea, you actually need data. And data not to actually to create your AI model. There's like a lot of approaches nowadays that allows to incorporate synthetic data for actually doing this, creating the solution. Your data is actually needed to actually do evaluation, to understand like how well the solutions, that initial solutions that would be developed would be work well on your data. This is why like these two things is very important. Like first, like start from idea. Second, like goes with data. But I would not say that data is as critical nowadays. It's still like critical to work to have like the best model. But even the data can be actually negotiating with generating like some synthetic data, or even collecting data together like with the vendors that would help you to develop like this AI solution.
Okay. Yeah, well, and I also would say that's an area, if you do have a large amount of data, firms like Geniusee can do an AI ideation session with you and review that information and see, is there something there that you can turn into another revenue model? Is there something that you can enhance more to be more efficient, more accurate, develop barriers to entry into your space? I'm curious as far as what self-checklist to prepare before contacting a vendor when you're looking at doing an AI solution.
I think like the checklist is actually whether you have like a nice idea. That's like a zero in this checklist. The first one is actually, the first thing is actually whether you actually know what to do, or whether you need like to actually have like this ideation phase, like want to start like with this ideation phase. After that, the question is like whether you have like some entire infrastructure already developed, and like whether like which framework did you want to choose like to actually to build on top of your data, whether that's like something within the same type of language or like within the different type of language. What do you have like already in your system? That's like an important thing like to mention. And the third thing is actually where you want to be in 3, 4, or 5 years. And this is like pretty important because like these AI models are growing like pretty rapidly. And at the start of the project, like some things could not be possible, but at the end of the project, like things could already appear. We saw how rapidly actually OpenAI grew in like last, I don't know, like 2, 3 years. So they like started like from a simple chatbot that can just like receive you input as a via text and provide you output via text. But nowadays you can use or you can already use voice. It can generate like some images for you and other things. So actually, that's the things are developing are pretty rapidly, and that means that you need actually to be really creative and think what you actually want to, how you want your solution to be working like in 3, 4, 5, 6 years, like. And what we can do for you, we can actually monitor like these technologies, and we can suggest you look like you wanted to do that was not possible like, I don't know, like 3 months ago, but nowadays it's possible, and we can help you to develop that.
Okay. Well, and on that tangent, what's likely to be the next big breakthrough or trend in AI?
I think like the next big breakthrough is actually something that AI is not capable nowadays. And I think like there are at least two directions. The first one is actually 3D generation. And here like AI is more or less not as good nowadays, but it would like really show a huge boost like in the next few months, even I would say. So, and the only reason why 3D generation is not like pretty good nowadays is actually because additionally to 3D shape, you also need to generate like 3D texture. And this is like something that actually it's pretty hard to generate 3D texture on top of 3D object and understand like how all this physics should work. But I think that would like really would be solved like pretty easily. The second thing is I think like is a really interesting trend of AI. So we see that's like a lot of modalities are received like as an input to large language models. So nowadays we have like this audio, we have like video, and we have like images, yeah, and text, yeah. So this is like at least like 4 modalities that I know like large language models are working like nowadays. but nowadays AI models still cannot like do all those modalities as an output. So for example, AI model could not generate you a song in specific like style. I don't know, like Christmas carol in some country style. Whether that's possible, I don't think so. So
Okay.
there are like third-party solutions to do that, but like AI, like as an open AI or like any large language models cannot do that yet. But I think like that would be like a really huge breakthrough in the next year or next 2 years. I would also think about like large language model as some universal mind that could actually have a lot of inputs and have a lot of output. And I think like that would what would change in next years. We would have like some more and more inputs would be possible to add like to that AI model, and more output would be able to receive like from that AI model. An example, like assume that you have like some type of, I don't know, like robot. So nowadays, like you have like a lot of sensors of that robot, and mostly they are controlled like either like by some rules, either by some logic, either by like several different like AIs. One AI, I don't know, like to move your fingers like of your robot, another AI like to move your legs, and so on. What I think like would change like in next several years, actually the whole navigation process of the robot would be managed by a single AI model, and we would have like the direct connection to the sensors. So they would be receiving like this AI model will be receiving streams in the same way as we were receiving text, and we would be receiving like outputs in like either to move left up or moved hands down in the same manner as we are receiving text as an output of that model. I think like that would be like several like really huge trends in next like several years. I would say like even 1 2 year.
It is amazing how fast things are accelerating. And I'm curious, are we entering the artificial general intelligence era, or is that still a distant milestone?
I think like that's still a distant milestone, and the reason for that about lie in the plane of actually of how creative AI is. And I think like here like a huge problems arise with AI. Try to do a simple thing, like try to ask AI to generate you quiz on specific topics, and try to do that several times. How many different quizzes or types of question you would receive? I don't think that it would be like more than 100. So it would be like at most 100, and at some point like those answers like would be just repeating. There are parameters that you may change, but the problem here may arise as something that's called like hallucination. And hallucination in this quiz generation task would actually mean that you would ask a large language model to generate quiz about, I don't know, like about computer vision, and it would like be generating you task questions quiz about like cooking or something like that. So it would be like something completely different that you don't initially asked for. This means that like actually the creativity of the models are pretty limited nowadays. And I think like general intelligence era is something that, and this AGI is actually something that not only would be able to actually to do some action or repeat some based on its knowledge, or repeat some action based on its knowledge. It is something that would also have like this creativity possible. And I think like at the point like when we would see like this uh, first first creativity solutions of actually of AGI of artificial intelligence, then that's mean I think like we would be entering in the era of artificial general intelligence. But the interesting thing that here that I want also to mention, I don't know, like Eric, whether you saw, but actually several days ago, actually AI have beaten Stockfish, like that's a very well known like chess algorithm that by tricking it, it's not like win it by actually by like doing the right moves. It tricked it. It actually win from it by replacing it configs files. And that case is actually very interesting for me because like initially when I saw like this tweet, I thought that actually maybe we're entering the era of AI. So nowadays like AI could like already hack your system and actually change the configuration in a way to actually to win like chassis. But actually when I dive into that case, what I actually found out that the problem was not that actually AI was so clever and could hack like the system itself. The issue was that actually those that have set up the experiment, they actually gave AI full access to their entire system. So they allow AI to do whatever you want. So they actually wrote in their prompt, you can actually manipulate your actually command line. That means that you can enter whatever you want, like put like do whatever you want. And I think like here, like actually what could be a huge issue? The issue would not be like what actually that AI could break like some system. The issue would be that the humanity itself would be so confident in AI that it would start providing you access to whatever he wants and would not be even caring like whether like the person like itself like or the humanity would need to limit like somehow access like to for AI or like just provide like access to all. And by that, like actually AI would start doing like some random stuff and actually start like damaging the humanity itself, either by deleting like some tons of data, either by some doing like some other stuff. And here I think like this AI security question arises like very, very importantly. So we don't need to not only think about like how to integrate AI in our projects, but also how to actually ensure that what AI generated would not harm either our clients, either ourselves.
Yeah, I'm sure your chess example. There are a lot of Star Trek fans out there that are thinking of a certain scenario. I think it was at the Kobayashi Maru or whatever, where I won't go off on that tangent, but something I need to Google and read up on. We're going to throw in one last question here on a different tangent. Does it make sense to invest in OpenAI's new O3 model? What factors should influence a decision like this?
I think like actually the main factor would like that you need to care about whether it will bring you as much value as you would invest in it. So what we very often see with our clients that it sometimes not even makes sense to invest in O4 model. So the quality itself of O3.5 and O4 for some tasks is pretty similar, but the cost of O3.5 is much more lower. And that's why like actually the clients don't need like this O4 model or O1 model. They just need this O3.5 model that is already like pretty good. And from cost perspective, that covers like don't cost you a lot. And here like actually very important things arises. You really need to care about not only about how much the solution costs, but also how much value it actually brings.
Great. Thank you, Oles. This has been very enlightening. I've learned a lot. I'm definitely hoping to have some more time to chat with you on these topics. I want to let everybody in the audience know the path to a successful AI development, it starts with choosing the right tools and strategies. If you're rethinking Python's role in your project or you're exploring cutting edge alternatives like RAG or LangChain, our team at Geniusee is here to help. We've got more than 7 years experience, 180 successful projects delivered. We specialize in crafting tailored solutions that drive real results. From AI-driven applications to robust cloud infrastructures, we're here to help you navigate those challenges and create impact. Ready to explore those possibilities? Contact us at our team and learn today how we can transform your vision into a reality. Thank you again, everyone, and thank you, Oles.
Thank you, Eric.